sent the tweet out. Hopefully, because my mod is out getting dinner for Kiddo and us. I don't have anybody to tell me if I'm live yet, so I'm just gonna freestyle it, y'all. Welcome to the Bonnet Chronicles. I'm your host, Kalari GXC, also known as Kalari Gamer Chick on Twitter, Tanisa Walker everywhere else. I'm not gonna lie, it has been a rough week for me, y'all. I made an announcement on Twitter a few days ago. Had a very personal loss to my family that I found out due to legal action because said family would rather fight each other over assets than be decent people. So I've been trying to process everything, and it was hard. And I almost took tonight off, but there's just so much to talk about that I honestly would have felt bad if I had just took the night off. I was hoping to have started up this Bonnet Chronicles on a new system that I bought. I broke down, got me a new laptop that functioned not just as a laptop, but a gaming system that I could also utilize to broadcast. And it came today. It looked very pretty. It doesn't power on. So it's just been one of those days. And even though I'm smiling inside, I want to cry. And I'm just going to power through it. I've been working with Dell. I'm still waiting on the email from their customer service so I can send them the picture of the pretty system that they sent me that doesn't work and hopefully get it replaced. And maybe by next week I'll have the show done on the new system, but I don't know. Other than that, it has been a rough day, honestly. If you haven't been paying attention to the news, you probably have not seen the fact that Georgia, which gave us our Senate majority, are now dealing with voter suppression on a level that is insane. Brian Kemp needs to not be the governor when his spot comes up. But it goes beyond that because 43 other states are dealing with their GOP issue of trying to change laws so that it's harder for people to have ease of access of voting. And they're not just doing things like targeting people giving out water and food, even though that was blatantly a part of the GA's new round of suppression laws. They are now trying to pass legislation that will make it where state can go against the will of the people who place their vote. And they are also attacking absentee ballot. And that was a big reason why we were able to not only get rid of Donald Trump, but to change Senate out of Mitch McConnell's hands. So it is going to be a mess, y'all, and we are in for a fight. And like so many of my friends have said on social media, Black people have lived through 400 plus years of white terrorism. So we are not immune or shocked by the actions of the GOP in Georgia or places like North Carolina or even here in Michigan. They're trying their tricks because they know that in a free and fair election, they don't have a chance in hell, especially after backing that orange idiot for 4 years. So the only way they can continue to have a feeble grasp on power is to try to restrict citizens from access to vote. And this is why I tell people constantly that those of you who think that your vote don't matter, that your right to vote isn't up for grabs, look at the stuff that they are doing. A representative in Georgia wanted to be in to see why Kemp and his cohorts in front of a frickin' plantation painting was signing a bill that would make it harder for Georgia citizens who already face ridiculous amounts of suppression tactics to where they stand in line for hours just to cast their vote would do this, and she was arrested. We are going to see the GOP try to fight hard and dirty, and we have to be prepared for it. And I've seen a lot of the same sentiment from people that, oh, we need to go down to Georgia and I'm willing to be arrested, passing out water and stuff. We don't have to go to those extremes. It is appreciated that some of you want to go to those extremes, but the best thing we can do for Georgia voters is to be smart about this. drawing attention to yourself, acting like martyrs. That is a look at me. We don't need that right now. We need constant organization, which I am so glad that Georgia still has Stacey Abrams and plenty of black women who know we can devise care packages so that voters have their supplies on them. And let me tell you something about black older voters. They will come in prepared anyway. So that whole, oh, you can't pass out water on the line nonsense, fine. Stop people from being good Samaritans. You can't stop voters from bringing stuff with them. And if they try that, then the ACLU needs to step up and prosecute the state of Georgia for harming the right for voters to be comfortable, to be able to vote with ease of access, and to vote orderly. Let's face it, they are going to try every tactic they can to cheat. And the best thing we can do is, instead of planning for our arrest, planning to cause civil disobedience, which only hurts the people who are just there trying to cast their vote, we get smarter. Black people, we've had to do this for years. We've had to circumvent all the laws that they put in to dehumanize and make it harder for us to live as citizens. We will be all right. Georgia can fuck around and they will find out. Just like they did last year when we put Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff into the Senate and took that power out of Mitch McConnell's hands. And we got to watch it here in Michigan. We have to watch it in New York. We have to watch it everywhere. Because anywhere the GOP has a little bit of power, they are going to be pulling these tactics. Because they have seen that they cannot hold on to a House, Senate, and White House altogether because they do not have the competence. Most people with a brain in their head do not want to run with this party anymore, especially after Trump. Who do they have backing them? Gun nuts like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Josh Hawley, who helped Capitol rioters do their insurrection in January? We are not dealing with logical, rational, reasonable people. So we have to go into protect mode. So instead, like I said, instead of plotting and planning for being arrested, instead of hoping that you can go down to Georgia and raise a ruckus, start planning care packages. Make sure that you can organize with people in Georgia to do stuff that will not harm the voters of Georgia. I know it's hard, especially if you're not black, to understand what it's like to go under the radar so that we can get stuff done. So many of you think you have to be loud and show off and have everybody look at you, have the press filming you get arrested. That kind of show off stuff might work for your demographic, but black people know better. We don't want that kind of attention drawn on us because they won't just be arresting you. They'll be taking us in too. We don't need that kind of trouble. You talk about good trouble, be good in a way that doesn't harm the people you say you want to help. I'm being dead serious about this because I don't think people are thinking this through. And I've seen too many people that I know that they're feeling passionate about this. And welcome, Silent. Yes, there is a difference. There's a difference between helping others and doing something that you think is going to help, but it's only to show that you're helping. That's what I say about allyism. There's a lot of people out there that want to tell people that you're our allies without putting in the effort. And like I said, you do nobody any form of good if you're getting arrested passing out water to people in line, when we could develop a way to have care packages for people so that they can't even say anything to them. Exactly, they do. And welcome, X Slash. Silent, I made you a moderator because you are always in the chat. I hope you don't mind. I just figured it would help me out, especially right now where Axiom is out getting dinner for us. I just like having an extra pair of eyes. So if you're not okay with that, I will take it away, but I appreciate you helping out for real. But yeah, it's sad the amount of people who will put BLM in their bio or rainbow flag when they're not LGBT and then they do everything polar opposite of what they could be doing to help the groups that they are supposed to be allies to. And for me this morning, it was upsetting enough seeing Kemp try to ramrod these horrible voter suppression tactics through in Georgia, but then seeing people talking about getting their kids involved and getting doing something that could get them arrested. And it's like, there are better ways to handle this. There are better ways to handle this that won't harm the people that you're supposedly trying to help. And I know that in saying this, you're going to have some people that are like, how dare you? How do you know? I'm black. I lived in Georgia. I know how they'll turn this around and it will harm us. So please think before you start planning your trip down to a state that you don't live in to supposedly help out and cause more harm than good. We want good trouble, not the I need a pat on my back kind of trouble. And the best way we can do this is to organize and to trust the people down there who have been organizing despite men like Brian Kemp. I need people to think rationally on this. And I know it's hard. I know that passions get inflamed when you see stuff like this. We know this is in direct response to the fact that not only did Georgia give us Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff, but also made sure that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were sworn in. But we have to keep doing things the right way. They want us to act the fool. It is so much easier for them to pass harder suppression laws when we disobey the laws they set. It's really hard for people who aren't used to laws being pushed against them so vehemently. But trust me, when I say as black women, none of this shocks me. But none of it's going to stop me from voting. I'm keeping my eye on Michigan. I know there are people here in Michigan that want to try this nonsense. They're not going to be able to do it. Absentee ballots, as long as you have your name on file and you have put it in, they can't stop us from voting. They might try, but that's when we call our reps. And if you are in the state of Georgia and you believe that what Kemp is doing is unjust and unfair, call your reps. If you are in another state and you want to help without getting yourself arrested, call your reps. Put the pressure on your state senator to work with Joe Biden on safe voter measures in every state. We need to make it where ease of access voting for every adult 18 and over with no excuses. We need to make it where polling places are optional so that polling places are not overwhelmed on election day. Early voting needs to be a thing, which the GA that GA legislation is trying to reduce. There is so much good we can do instead of planning for bad stuff. Because we've seen who ends up the victims of your protest gone wrong. This affects my people. I've got family in Georgia. I might not be on a good note with some of my family right now, but I still want them to be able to vote. And I don't want people coming from out of state going into that state and fucking things up worse for them because you think you're helping. Your help needs to be helpful, not harmful. So I really hope that if you're watching this, if you share this with others, that you understand that I'm not criticizing your passions. I get the anger. I was upset this morning myself, but I needed time to think and clear my head to get rational, which wasn't an easy day for it, but I did it because I realized that going to Georgia angry isn't going to help anybody. Exactly. Unless you're moving to Georgia, unless you live in Georgia, keep your ass out of Georgia for now. It's still a pandemic, so you don't need to be going down there anyway. Just think before you do, because your actions will have consequences that might not affect you directly, but it will affect people that I know and care about directly. And I just don't want to see that happening. And you see how easily corrupt men like Kemp, can move legislation past when they have enough cronies to do it. This is why voting is important. Brian Kemp only beat Stacey Abrams by a small margin. If more people would turn out to vote in ways that it can't be contested, we would have less Brian Kemps and more Gretchen Whitmers. My governor has been on top of things despite death threats, despite all these mass calls constantly protesting her shutdowns and her lockdowns and her restrictions that are only in place to keep us safe. This is what happens when you have somebody in charge that actually cares about the state they're running versus the man like Kemp who only cares about holding power. This is why we have to protect voting rights. This is why I am with Joe Biden on passing a federal mandate so that if states don't get their act together, we can sue them using the federal mandate to protect our rights to vote. It is beyond time that American citizens who have the right to vote feel safe and confident in being able to vote. Now, the original topic of the show was going to be legislation. Because exactly, they should lose federal money if they do not honor safe and ease of access voting. That is a good point, Silent. Because a lot of these states don't get it unless you hit them in the pockets. Take that federal funding away from them if they want to disenfranchise voters based on their color or gender or sexual identity. Because you know that's where it's going. A lot of people think, oh, this is going to affect black voters. But Georgia had an issue with throwing away Asian ballots as far back as 4 years ago as well. Primary and national ballots. We have a lot of issues with the GOP doing shenanigans against everyday voters. And we cannot afford to sleep on this. And like I said, it's not the only measure that Biden could and should be looking at. Now, I know 2 days ago, there was another shooting in Colorado. Right after last week's cast about the Georgia shooting, 3 days after that, we lost 10 lives in a senseless shooting in Colorado, making the death toll 18 lives to gun violence by a hysterical male. Now, the only difference between the GA shooter and the Colorado shooter is the religion they identify by. We're hearing a lot of stories about the Colorado shooter. Why? Because his name is Muslim and he identified as Muslim American. Even though his skin tone is definitely melanin deficient, because his name was Muslim, yeah, we're hearing a lot about the Colorado shooter and the victims of the Colorado shooter, especially since one of the victims was a police officer. But it wasn't even a full week before that 8 citizens, several who were Asian Americans, were murdered in Georgia by a radicalized white Christian male. So the issue and the key factor is ease of access to assault rifles, which I will say again, there is absolutely no reason for people to own such weapons of mass death. If you want to own a standard issue gun to protect your home and you want to go through the licensing to own one, I'm fine with that. But AR-15 should not be in the hands of civilians. And we have seen in a week's time the damage and the loss of life that can happen. And what really got me 2 days ago, before I took a break after getting that news about my grandmother, was seeing friends lament that they didn't think that any legislation would ever get passed because nothing changed after Sandy Hook. And while I understand the sentiment and I didn't want people feeling like I was targeting them directly, because I noticed on Twitter everybody stays in their fields, so you can't even say something without people feeling like you're directly attacking them. My statement was in general. I was not directly calling any of you out. I'm just saying that you need to think about when Sandy Hook happened. Yes, Barack Obama was president, but Mitch McConnell had the Senate majority. So anytime we tried to pass sensible gun reform, it was stymied by McConnell and Paul Ryan. I know it's hard if you're not into politics to know all that was going on back and forth during those days, but Barack Obama couldn't just pass gun reform. He wanted to. The dude tried after Sandy Hook. But he is president. President is not king. They do not have absolute power. If you cannot get the measure passed in both the House and Senate, there's not much the White House can do outside the executive order. And even then, that could be vetoed by the Supreme Court. This is why I say basic civics need to be taught. But what I was trying to stress to my friends who thought I was personally attacking them by saying don't use Sandy Hook as an excuse is right now we have a Democratic president and vice president, a 50-50 split in our Senate, which gives us the majority when our whip, who is our VP, casts the deciding vote if it's a tie, and full control of our House. So with that, we have the best path right now to put a federal gun reform bill to the House and Senate and get it passed. Now is the time to not mope around and think because we haven't had it for so long we can't have it. Columbine happened right after I got out of high school. We had incidents of people bringing guns to school in New York, but it wasn't as serious as Columbine. We had metal detectors installed in some New York schools, not mine, but still. Changes in how schools protected themselves started happening in the late 90s. And right after I graduated high school, Columbine happened in Colorado. And right after that, Bill Clinton passed a measure for gun control that lasted for years until George W. Bush took power. And thanks to NRA lobbyists and his Republican cohorts, got taken off the books. So when you think about what can and cannot happen, me as a Gen Xer, I can tell you some of the things that people would say would never change, that has changed, would blow your mind if you didn't live through it. I remember when seatbelts were an optional thing in cars, where you didn't get a ticket if you didn't click it, where smoking was allowed everywhere, hospitals, planes, movie theaters, restaurants. We had a list the other day talking about things we remember growing up. And I said, sitting in a movie theater, playing with the little ashtrays because they had that little spring noise. Thank you, dear. And stuff like that was so commonplace. And the tobacco lobbyists had such a stranglehold on a Congress, especially groups like RJR Nabisco, that we didn't believe there would ever be a time when smoking would have bans indoors. We never believed there was a time where people would be able to light up wherever the heck they want. But we got there. So telling me that because of Sandy Hook, we can't have sensible gun laws because if they didn't care then, they're not going to care now is so unfair to not only the lives lost, but the parents who are still struggling to go on. But to all of us who are tired of seeing these mass shooters destroy so many lives so easily. I'm not saying that you can't have tragedy with standard guns. Gun violence is a problem that I don't see us getting away from anytime soon. But if we can mitigate the damage done, if we could take these weapons that can take so many lives so quickly out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them in the first place, that's a step in the right direction. Exactly. All because they can't have their way of something important, or because people don't like them, or because they're not getting the sex they think they deserve. They have so many excuses for why they can get angry, buy an AR-15, and just take lives willy-nilly. And what we need to be able to do is stop them from being able to do that. New Zealand had one of the worst mass shooting incidents 2 years ago. What did that president do or prime minister do? She passed a ban on assault weapons quickly, efficiently. Those people didn't balk because they realized that why the heck do you need an assault rifle? I don't hear any logical argument for why any American citizen that is not in the military going to war needs to have an AR-15. There is no reason to indulge these people who have Call of Duty type fantasies to have these kind of weapons. And honestly, even ex-military with those kind of weapons can be dangerous, because we just had an incident where ex-military man went out to the residence that our vice president and the first gentleman are staying, armed to the teeth with untraceable ammo and the AR-15. The key issue is the availability of AR-15s to average American citizens. We need to make this stop being a thing. And I'm tired of hearing about how it's not possible to stop AR-15s from getting into the hands of civilians. Not only do we make it where the sale of AR-15s to civilians are illegal, we make sure that people who own them illegally are fined and jailed. If you don't want to give up your rights to be a free citizen, don't indulge in illegal activity. That's what you tell the black people all the time. Just comply. Well, you need to comply with the fact that we don't need you having a weapon that can take that many lives in seconds. There's absolutely no excuse. And it's just tiring seeing people give life to the whole, oh, well, we haven't had it in so long. I remember when we got actual gun restrictions after Columbine. So I know it is possible to get gun reform. I'm not saying take everybody's guns away. That would cause a whole host of problems that we don't need right now, especially since we can't even get people to wear a freaking mask during a pandemic. But I have not met anybody, and I have friends, family, the person I love that own guns, that argue with the thought that we should have actual reform. There should be stricter gun ownership rules. You should have a license to own a gun. We have a license to drive a car. We have a license to fly a plane. You technically are supposed to even have a license to hunt and fish. So why do people balk at having a license for an item that is supposed to bring death? Well, idea. Seriously though, with my grandfather on my mother's side, he trained us girls because he was afraid that this country was going to go out of pocket. His biggest fear was there was going to be a war, another civil war type thing, and he wanted the family trained for stuff. So even us girls, because he didn't think gender was a restriction on whether a girl knew how to fight and take care of themselves, learned how to shoot. My family going to a gun range was nothing out of the ordinary for us. But what he told us as kids, and I keep reiterating this, is that a gun is not a toy, and you are not using this, as Hollywood puts it, to maim somebody or incapacitate somebody. You are using this to kill somebody. A gun is a tool to kill. It is not a toy. It is a weapon. I have used it to kill people. If you put it in your hands, you are using it because you are taking somebody's life. It is because I knew how serious it was that I never treated guns like a toy. And a lot of these people walk around cosplaying, armed to the teeth with these weapons that are dangerous because they don't take it seriously. And those type of people do not deserve to have the right to be wielding these weapons. If your response to sensible gun reform is to arm yourself to the teeth, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and have a shrine to assault rifles, you don't deserve to own guns. You are a danger and a detriment, and obviously too unstable to be a responsible gun owner. I have a mental illness. I was Baker acted 3 times. One of the things that I lost back then, because of that, was access to hold concealed weapons. My former job allowed me to own concealed weapons. But because of my illness, and because honestly it's safer for me not to have one, that was taken away before the orange turd repealed that. So now I do believe I can legally own a gun again, which luckily for you, I have the good sense and support system not to do that. But it's a shame that we have people who should be more responsible leaders in the GOP who don't care about stuff like this. It shouldn't be another day that ends with Y that we have a mass shooting. And I'm sick and tired of all the excuses people give for why we can't have such sensible legislation to restrict access. When a 17-year-old can cross two state lines with an AR-15 and end two innocent lives just protesting for Black lives to matter. When a 21-year-old can go into different spas and shoot up employees because he was just having a bad day. When people just going out to get their groceries can't worry about having a bullet pumped into them, we're beyond the point of where excuses are acceptable anymore. This is ridiculous. And I'm tired of seeing reasonable people give up hope. I know it was hard. We went through 4 years of Keystone Cop level fascism. And I'm glad for that bit that Trump and his cohorts weren't smart enough to really do full-on fascism. That not only was Trump an idiot, but he surrounded himself with idiots who just wanted to save their own skin. But we won't get it next time if the GOP manages to get somebody smarter and more craven in the power. So right now is the best time to push for better gun legislation, to push for gun reform. Another thing that popped into my head, same-sex marriage. When I was a child, especially, being openly gay was almost akin to a death sentence. I lived in New York during the 70s and 80s. I seen the mass graves from AIDS, as Reagan called it, a moral crisis. I seen the way our country turned our backs on its citizens because of who they loved. So during the 90s, when the talks of marriage equality started to really gain steam, there were those naysayers, even in my family, especially the fundamentalist types, that were like, oh, there's no way. There's no way the gays will ever get the marriage. And that's how they said it. That is not my words. But there were a lot of people who did not believe same-sex marriage would ever pass. And even politicians we respected did not push as hard for same-sex marriage as they could have until they seen where the people's will were going. And now, couples who are straight, couples who are gay, couples who are non-binary can get married legally. There are still some idiots like Susan Smith, or I think that's her name, I don't know, that horrible woman that didn't want to sign marriage certificates. I'll get her name later. There are plenty of people who will balk about same-sex marriage, but it's a federal mandate, so there's not much they can do about it. We have the ability, and I'm so sick of people thinking that things are impossible because they have no hope. We got rid of Donald Trump in November of last year. We watched Joe Biden and Kamala Harris sworn in January. We have a Senate majority. And even though Schumer kind of gets on my nerves because tweeting about student loans when we just had 2 mass shootings, read the room, Chuck. But he is still our Senate majority leader. And we have Nancy freaking Pelosi, which happy birthday, Madam Speaker, who leads our House right now. This is the best time, especially after getting the CARES Act passed. We have shown that we can push for things without the GOP. It's the reason why some of us have stimulus money right now. We do not have to rely on the GOP to get gun reform passed. They're already too deep in the pockets of the NRA anyway. So right now, if you hear this, and you have a representative, I've already written my reps, I plan on calling them. I am not going to let up until every state has a senator backing, proper gun reform. Moms Demand Action is another charity that I donate to. I am friends with Shannon. We have followed each other on Twitter since the get. She is very committed to gun reform because so many lives are shattered by this. There's absolutely no excuse. And if you don't want to wait on the phone, if you don't want to deal with congressional aid or feel like your senator is not going to pick up in the first place, resist bot. You can resist bot on your phone. I believe it's text 5409. Or you can go on to their Twitter site at resistbot and you can send a letter to all your officials. And they read those letters. Believe me, you get responses from them. But it's on us to do the work. And it's on us to stop giving in to the pessimism of what's impossible. The only time something is completely impossible is if we give up on it. And that's right. It's so, I'm telling you, silent. Just seeing Schumer pushing for student debt relief when we just had a mass shooting not even 24 hours prior makes me feel like a lot of our Democrats are still under the effect of the leftists. And that's another thing we need to understand. They're going into victim mode. According to them, they're being targeted now on YouTube and on social media sites. People are trying to silence their voices. We're just not listening to you anymore. You said that we would bow at the knee if Bernie became president, so we served you with he's not winning the primary twice. You constantly try to downplay the damage that you do in our elections. Your squad are ineffective and useless. So yeah, my whole strategy for anybody with a rose emoji, hammer and sickle, or a Bernie would have won type name or title, I just ignore them now. I do not have to amplify them. I do not have to argue with them. I don't have to read their articles. I do not have to patronize anything they do because they are just blowing hot air. Their demographic that they're trying to reach don't vote in the first place. They can't hold their votes hostage because the poll numbers don't lie. So all I want to do, like many other American citizens, is keep it moving. Let them temper tantrum in their little circle jerk. But they're starting to realize that their group is not as big, not as influential as the media tried to portray them as, and now they're trying to say that they're being silenced. We're not silencing you. You can talk amongst yourselves. What you're not doing is actually organizing, so you don't have a say in what goes on in politics. Maybe organize instead of hashtagging. Maybe vote instead of threaten, and you'll get the stuff that you want. But until then, I'm going to stick to the adults in the room and stay away from the kiddie table of politics. That's just how it is. I am so over constantly arguing with the Breonna Joy Grays and Mike Sirotas or Dave Sirotas. I don't even want to remember their names anymore. That's how over this group I am. All they want to do is toss turds and see where it lands. We don't have to pay them any mind anymore. They lost twice in 2016 and 2019. And they can make their little pity hashtags about Kamala's delegates. Oh, she didn't even get a delegate. But Bernie was supposed to win, right? Your guy will never be president. He'll be pushing up grave dust before he gets to sit in the White House with POTUS. And you can stay salty about it. I don't care anymore. I'm going to keep it moving. Because I already suffered a loss in 2016 that I had to deal with for 4 years. I'm not going to freaking be miserable when we got the win. That's ridiculous. And arguing with these people is just inviting misery. Why? They lost. They need to get over it. Learn how to organize. If they don't, no skin off my teeth. I'm just tired of seeing rational people go to rounds with these troublemakers. Because that's all they are. They just want attention. They think that they would survive in some kind of communist utopia. They don't understand that there are plenty of countries out there with the communism that they think they want, where they wouldn't even be top tier in their society. But let them have those communist fantasies, because all they're going to do is get older and graduate over to the MAGA crowd anyway. So I don't have time or energy for them anymore. They're overprivileged, over entitled, people who have never had to fight for their rights in their entire life, and who think that free college is on the same level as being able to peacefully coexist in a place where I won't get shot to death for the color of my skin. I'm sorry, you're not on the same level as me, so I don't have to acknowledge you. And I'm not going to waste any more energy arguing with you. I went down the list of another friend the other day who was saying something very positive about Kamala Harris and blocked every single troll that was in her mentions. You know why? Because those are the type of people that seek out posts like mine, seek out posts like y'all's in the audience to start trouble. I don't have to see them anymore. And that is what I would suggest to any of you. If you see a Bernie brat, if you see a Rose Bro, if you see a wannabe socialist or a cosplay socialist, as I call it, block them. It will save you so much frustration. They are not worth your time. They are just going to whine about how they're being shut down, how YouTube algorithms are against them. No, nobody wants to watch your nonsense. You have 4 years to prove your case about how your revolution would be the best for everybody. But you decided that your revolution wouldn't center people who really need voter protection, who need protection from the police. You cry defund the police, but you don't want black people to have ease of access to vote because we're not voting for the people that would supposedly give you all the free shit. We don't want your allyism. You call yourself activists, but you ain't organizing anything constructive. So no, I don't want to ally with these people. I don't want to give them my energy. I want to keep it moving so that I can work with the adults in the room that can pass actual legislation. That is all I'm going to say about Bernie Brats after this. I don't care what drama or controversy they start up after tonight. I am officially retiring them from Bonnet Chronicle topics because they are not worth my time. We have so many issues that are way more important that we can tackle, that we can keep our eye on. And I'm tired of taking my eye off the prize to mind somebody else's toddler who never understood that just because you don't get your way and stuff, that you just do better and work harder towards getting it. No, they think they can tantrum and throw riots. They're no better than those idiots that stormed our Capitol on the 6th. So instead of yelling at them or arguing with them or trying to put them on a time out where they can see it, I'm just going to keep it moving and ignore them. Because that is the only way to snuff out their stupidity, is to not give it amplification or energy. And I will keep saying this as many times as people need to hear it. Because I feel like every time I put out a blog saying, if you just ignore these people, don't screen cap them, don't retweet their shit, ignore them. They don't have that, look, see, they're attacking me, I'm a martyr. I know you want to point fingers at their idiocy, but let's face it. All that bluster they had for Bernie Sanders, the most he drummed up during the primary polls, and I'm being generous with this, I believe was 24%. That wasn't enough to get him more than his state, and I think he won his state and maybe a couple of other smaller states. He couldn't even win Iowa. Pete beat him there. So anybody who wants to still talk about what Bernie would have done, why argue with them? They're not operating on reality at this point. The numbers don't lie. People didn't vote for him. So let's keep it moving so that we can focus on gun reform and we can focus on legislation that helps voting be safe and easy for us. Stop giving the energy that you could be using to call or write your representatives to make sure that your state doesn't have restrictive voting measures or enact actual sensible gun laws on arguing with these Bernie bozos. They're not worth your time. And I'm just tired of talking in circles to people who I know you're just smart enough to know better. And I know it's hard. We are frustrated. 4 years of being punched down on makes you punchy. So I'm not judging you for being angry. I'm not judging you for being exhausted. I'm not judging you for even wanting to pick a fight. But what I'm saying is exactly, Silent. That's what the block button is for. And you actually harm them more, if that's your angle, by ignoring them. Brianna can't go, oh, look at the K-Hive attacking me, if nobody who associates with the K-Hive has responded to her. All she'll look like is a wackadoo claiming that we're attacking her when we're not paying her no mind. She can't, you guys like Sorota can't say, look at these liberals coming after me with their vitriol, if we just block him in the first place. We do not have to argue with these jackasses. They get a platform by our hate. Is what I said a few issues ago about hate watching anything. You think that you're helping by hate watching The View? You're giving them their view. You're giving them the ratings. So that's why Big Bird can get on there with her ugly ass hairstyles and spout nonsense. Because you are hate watching it. And how do they know you're hate watching it? Well, besides the ratings, every day on Twitter I have several people commenting on Meghan McCain's hairstyle or the stupid ass crap that comes out of her Big Bird mouth. And you say that you can't stand her, but you watch her show. So you're not telling Network of Sex anything but let's keep her on. She's obviously controversial enough for us to talk about, so there's no reason for her to be replaced. You gotta realize that the energy, exactly, it's silent. The energy that we give to these people, they just turn it around on us. If we don't give them any of our time or energy, there's nothing to turn around. We have to work on ourselves. The things that tick us off aren't going to stop ticking us off. But if you learn what to fight and what to channel that energy in, the stuff you can get done is freaking amazing. Exactly, dear. But a lot of people don't get that. And you just keep arguing with these people. And you keep watching these shows. And you keep giving them ratings, hoping that something will change. And it doesn't. Because they see that, oh, I get a high number of hate watchers. It's like the Howard Stern thing I said last week. A lot of people who made Howard Stern famous did it because they wanted to hear what he was going to say next. They hated him. They thought he was odious. They said he's a moral issue. But they tuned into his show every day just to complain about him. And all you did was make the man rich or famous. So maybe learn from that. Stop amplifying these people. Stop giving them ratings. Stop sharing their articles, even if you're saying that they're idiots for writing it. Because eventually, when their publications realize these people aren't bringing in the numbers, advertisers don't want to deal with us, and people aren't talking or making them trend, we need to stop amplifying these people and find somebody else. But like I said, it's on us to do this. And we have so many other things that we could be focusing on. Exactly. We give attention whores their fix when we do this. And the best way to not give them that hit is to ignore them. To not give them our time and attention. Because as you can see right now, between rampant gun violence, people who think that they can just storm our Capitol when they don't get their way, a global pandemic, it's not just happening here in the States, it is all over the globe, and the fact that we have a GOP who are still salty and bitter that they lost several elections, now trying to change voter laws to harm average citizens from being able to vote easy. We have way more things that need our attention, people. So stop arguing with the Bernie brats and keep your eye on the prize. I will not stop saying this. That is why, even though I was tired today, even though I'm still grieving my grandma, that I decided to do the Bonnet Chronicles. Even though right now I'm still kind of pissed at Dell because I was supposed to be doing this from a whole brand new setting and studio. I'm still on my old system. It's still running pretty decently, thank goodness. Knock on wood. And hopefully by next week, I'll have the new system in here, up and running. It just depends on how long it's going to take them to put it together after I shoot off these emails. But despite feeling tired and not really into it, I wanted to be here tonight because I'm tired of seeing people that I love given to the pessimism. Stop forgetting that we won. This is supposed to be a time of hope. We have our first female vice president. We've never had one of those. And she happens to be a biracial black woman. Something that I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. And where we go from here, making sure that she has a good chance at becoming our first female president. Because there are so many people who are nastily trying to make sure that doesn't happen. That is why I want us to focus on continuing to organize and making sure voting access is available for every adult 18 and up. Because they are going to try their best to do dirty tactics to make sure that we don't have our first female president anytime soon. They think that we'll just be satisfied with a female VP, and I'm not. I'm not going to be happy until every single American demographic has had proper representation. And the only way I'm going to get that is to keep my eye on the prize and focus. That means no more arguing with these dunces who want to talk about Bernie. No more getting into it with the MAGAs, because most of them should be sitting in jail pretty soon anyway if they were at the Capitol. We need to focus on the people that we help get elected. We need to make sure that they keep the House and Senate. And we need to get these bills that can help get us ease of access voting and gun reform passed. It is on us. And if by now, in the 4 years that we have with Trump, you don't understand that actively participating in politics is a necessary thing, you are part of the problem. You can't just pass it off and hope somebody else will pick up the slack. There are not enough of us still who understand the seriousness of voting and knowing who is representing you in every single level of politics. It is important to know what legislation is being passed and if it's being passed behind closed doors in front of a plantation picture. It is important for you to invest as much of yourself as you invest in being online, in watching your favorite programs, in knowing who is your voice in the House, in the Senate, as your mayor, as your governor, as your freaking comptroller, for Pete's sake. Because if you poll the average American, most of us don't know who runs our district and who's on our judicial system, which we elect in most states. These are basic things that we should know that we don't. And that has to stop if we want a better system. If we want laws passed so that Breonna Taylor is the last woman murdered in her house while she's sleeping peacefully. There are so many things that we need to tackle. And I say we because it is on us. It goes beyond just casting a ballot. You need to be focused and paying attention because so many lives rely on this. And even if you're not in the demographic that you think feels these things directly, because I know some people feel like they're insulated in this bubble of white privilege that will protect them from it. Trust me, you're not protected, especially if you're a woman right now. Because if they can strip our rights, they will come for yours. And I'm not trying to live in a Gilead. I'm not trying to be in a fundamentalist nation that reduces my rights to be a human being and live a viable life because some of you didn't want to know who you want to represent to you as your voice. Stop being so lazy. It doesn't take much to cast a ballot or read and find out what's being passed in your state. You spend that much time and energy sharing TikTok videos. So come on, y'all. I really thought the last 4 years was going to get people together. Exactly. You can Google, you can use Ballotpedia. I used Ballotpedia for the last election because we had a lot of legislative measures on there that I didn't know just by their code. And because of Ballotpedia, I was able to look up and get a breakdown of what the ballot measures are. I sat with my tablet on one side, my ballot on the other, and I was able to make an informed decision. There is no excuse in the digital age for us not to be smarter, more informed voters. It's just abject laziness at this point, and I am not going to allow people to keep making those excuses. We have seen what we could have happen to us when we slack off. And like I said, the only thing that saved us from Donald Trump is there were a bunch of morons. But I do not put it past the few GOP, and I hate to use the word leaders, that are still around, not plotting and planning to figure out how they can put Trump's belief system into a neater package. And if we get slacking before they can put it together, they're going to get somebody worse than Trump in office. And we can't afford that. Because everything Trump didn't get to do, this person will do and worse. So we need to be on the ball with this, y'all. And we need to be taking this so seriously. We need to be paying attention to our state, our local, and of course the national elections. We need to write our senators about the filibuster. Because obviously McConnell doesn't want to filibuster God. Now, my paranoia, and this is just me, says it's funny how he's not really loudly attacking the filibuster. And I've seen where it could work for the Democrats as well. So I'm worried about all these people pushing for it to be ending without knowing the damage it could do to us. So while I am on the fence right now about where I feel about the filibuster, if it hurts Mitch McConnell, I'm fine with getting it taken away. But I want people to understand that we need to know all sides of this before we just come out yay or nay for anything. And I don't know enough about how the filibuster is used for or against us to just say repeal it. Exactly. And if the Senate flips into the GOP's favor, takes away our power to stop them from doing horrible things. So I just want people to think. Use that brain of yours and stop getting pulled into mob mentality on stuff that sounds good and makes you feel good saying it. I understand the need to feel good and empowered and chanting and cheering for something, but if what you're cheering for could be detrimental to us in the long run, you're not really as helpful as you think you are. Think before you jump on a bandwagon. I'm being real serious about this because I fear how easily people get carried away by social media, especially when they get behind a slogan, when they just want to chant something and feel so passionately about something they don't have enough facts on. And I'm seeing way too many people yelling, end the filibuster, without realizing that our Senate is still split 50-50. It is not split in a way that favors either or in the majority right now, and we can't afford to get rid of a tool that, if Mitch McConnell gains control again, could stop him from passing things that would hurt us. So please, y'all, think before you jump on the bandwagon. I'm going to get ready to wrap things up. Axiom brought dinner a few moments ago, and I'm getting hangry. It's been a really long day, but I am glad I did this. I want to thank everybody who joined the chat. And that's another good point, Silent. It is too grueling to just use it nonchalantly. Every time I've seen people use it, they spent hours using a filibuster. So I don't trust those who are like, just end it, without understanding what it's used for, who abuses it, and maybe instead pass laws that will help utilize the filibuster effectively without completely nuking it. But like I said, I'm going to wrap it up. I will be back next week. Whether it's on this old system or on the new one, fingers crossed for me that Dell will have that email because I'm getting kind of irate about that. Not to steal your name, Silent. But other than that, I want to thank you all for your support, for being a part of the Bonnet Chronicles. I'm going to upload this to YouTube for anybody who missed the whole thing or who wants to rewatch the cast. And I will see you all next week. Thank you for joining in, and thank you, Silent, for being my new mod along with Axiom. Thank you, Axiom, for being in the chat. I love you, and I will see y'all next week.